I started with Yamaha on January 2nd, 1985. The job was in what we called at the time competition support, which ran contingency, kind of like it does what we do now, support for pro support riders, guys like Jimmy Hawley and that type at that time, and then amateur riders. So, but it was a pretty big program. There were a lot of riders, both through dealers and direct, getting support. Yeah, I think from the beginning, the amateur level of competition for us, that involvement was key because we had already proven with riders like Eddie Hicks, who was at the tail end of his amateur career when I started, and I worked with him for a year or two, and then he made the transition into pro. But that was that was our farm system to build into whether it was pro support or directly to the factory team. In Eddie's case, I think he went straight to the factory level, but a lot of riders like at the time, Jeff Stanton, Mike Guerra, Todd DeHoop, riders like that were at the upper echelon level of the amateur program, and within the next year or two also made that transition and went on from there. Working with these amateur riders, for me, I was young and new to this, so it was more about, at that point, building a relationship with the riders and their families. And once you establish that relationship, you become part of the family in a way. And when they move on, it's almost like, I experienced it years later with my own kids, and you watch your child go up and graduate from high school or college, and it's like, okay, we made it, they moved on, and it's time to get to work on the next one, and there's always that next one, or those next riders coming through. I mean, seeing a rider progress and succeed and continue to build his career, obviously you feel a lot of pride and in seeing them achieve these things, and you feel like, I think I like to feel I had a part of that, and not just me, but Yamaha as a whole. If I had to pick, I'd say my favorite event was what today is still, in my opinion, the biggest amateur motocross of the year, and that's Loretta Lynn's. I first went to Loretta's in '85, and that event holds a real special place in I guess you could say in my heart, because I remember very clearly the year that my youngest was due, and the doctor came and said, he's going to be due the first week in August. And I said, well, that's Loretta Lynn's. I can't miss Loretta Lynn's. And it was Keith that talked me out of it and said, no, you need to be there. You can't, so we can get somebody else to fill in. So reluctantly, I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but reluctantly I didn't go. He ended up being born right in the middle of the week on a Wednesday. For the next 4 years, I was at Loretta's when he turned 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'd tell my wife, it's okay, we'll celebrate when I get back. And he's too young, he won't remember. He'll think his birthday's a week later. And it worked. It wasn't until his 5th birthday that finally the dates happened to fall where, okay, now I can be there. So that's the kind of thing that's the level of, I guess, passion that I had for that event and what it meant to Yamaha, to us, to the riders. Just kind of a different level from any other event. We had built this program in the late 80s. We had 3 box vans across the country that were going for trackside support to different races, amateur races, pro races, off-road races even. And, this big downfall came, and suddenly we got rid of the vans, everything was basically liquidated, and it was, okay, start over. My concern was supporting Loretta Lynn's. We still had riders, and we needed to support them. So I talked to Pro Circuit and said, you guys, you've been going to Ponca City to this NMA championship for a number of years, but you really need to think about going to Loretta Lynn's. But when you send your van, I need to put a new YZ250 in the back of it and a couple of crates of parts. So they agreed. They drove their van back there. I flew back there, got the new YZ250. We built a stand for it, kind of a platform, had a sign printed, put the bike on display. So we had a display. It wasn't a big tent. It wasn't a full product line. It was one bike. And then I had some crates with some parts in them. So I can remember working at a picnic table behind the starting line at the time, off to the side, splitting cases on a I don't know who it was, just a Riders 250. But the important thing was that it may have been a low point, but we were still there. I think riders recognize that. And, I can say that we never left. And then the next year, things got a little better. We started building back up. That's when we developed the trackside support program, where we didn't have our own staff or trucks to send, but we had a dealer network. And that there were dealers in that network that they wanted to do something. It built into what it is today. Watching how things at the amateur level have evolved over these past 35 years, it's a completely different world. Again, talking about Loretta's, it's still the premier event, but now there are so many other events that strive to be what Loretta's is. And the level of support and recognition that amateur riders get now it's unprecedented. Back in the day, team managers, professional managers come to Loretta's and they would come to kind of scope out the competition, scope out the riders that are on their brand and who are on the other brands. And then in the next month or so, they would contact these riders and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about moving up to the pro ranks. Now you have amateur riders that are signed to virtually professional careers and they're still on 85s. So it's a completely different world. It's much more competitive, and I think it comes from making amateur racing much more prominent, and everyone recognizes that we've got to start building these riders from when they're very young. My favorite memory or memories of Yamaha have got to be the gatherings, the times that we would get together. For instance, the Wall of Champions is a big one because it was a concept, it was an idea born of a small group and born out of the recognition that we really need to do something to recognize our history, our legacy. And when you have been around, you were around in that era and you've watched how things have changed, and you realize, there's new young people coming in all the time into the company, in and out, and maybe they don't know about this legacy, about this history. Maybe they're an enthusiast and they know something about it, but certainly not all of it. And even we didn't know all of it, but we made it a point to kind of dedicate ourselves to reach out and find out all this information and recognize those champions, those people that made us what we are today. And I think we all realize that that's something you can't lose sight of. You can't lose touch with. And those are some of the best, I think, feelings and the most valuable achievements probably that I've been a part of. You can win races, but those wins fade. And 20 years from now, nobody remembers that. Heck, 5 years from now. But something like that will stand the test of time, I think.